Hey everybody, this is JR from West Virginia and Commonplace, and I am here to tell you about Anchor Nebula and their Go Anywhere series of projectors. They are some of the best projectors you can use when you're on the go, going camping, just even around the house. And these models include the Capsule 2, the Capsule 3 laser, and the brand new Mars 3. So definitely take time to go out and grab one of these projectors, and you will be immersed in an experience that you're not going to get anywhere else. Remember, Anchor Nebula is the way to go.
WV Uncommon Place. This podcast is a variety podcast that houses numerous series to cover mental health, empowerment, podcast framework, and various intimate theories to get to know the hosts. Along with occasional movies reviews and dives in pop culture with our event podcast episodes. The Uncommon Place digs into bringing guests on that stories don't fit the mold and are very different. WV stands for the great state of West Virginia, and every quarter we cover something in West Virginia. Stacey and myself, JR, are your hosts, so please come along for this venture to our Uncommon Place.
Welcome to West Virginia and Commonplace. I am your host, JR, and I'm back from a long hiatus. Interviewing and all the random things that go on in podcasting take their toll on me. Today, I have a special guest with me, and I love her name. Her name, I can actually pronounce it. I got it right on the first part of our pre-call. And her first name is Anne, and her last name is Hintz, just like Prince, but Hintz. So, Anne, I'm going to pass it along to you in just a moment. The key thing that we do at the very beginning of the show, audience, and like everyone knows, is we're going to ask the nostalgic question, who is Anne? And when Anne answers that question, she's going to answer that question as thorough as she can, and then give us a little insight into how you became the Anne you are today.
Okay, well, I'm really no one special, but I've developed an ability that I didn't know existed before. So in some ways, I've changed a lot over the years, but for many, many years, I've been a stay-at-home mother. Before that, I was a software engineer, but things started in childhood. I had a lot of trauma in childhood. Many of us do. So I don't think it was any different from other people's, but I had some things go on. I was adopted. Before I was adopted, even I was born with my right foot up against my right shin. So my whole body was kind of torqued and twisted, and that comes into my story later. But I had different things happen through childhood. We traveled around the world, and I was sent to a boys' boarding school when I was 9, which resulted in a lot of teasing. And when I was a teenager, both my parents were alcoholics. So that formed a lot of my self-worth, or lack of. And when I was 19, I woke up one morning and found my mother dead on the bathroom floor.
Oh.
So that was kind of the big trauma on top of many smaller traumas. And I was living in England at the time. And when I was 21, I'd graduated. I moved out to the States and became a software engineer and carried on, kind of hoping that I had left my childhood behind in England. But it doesn't work that way. We keep all of that history stored inside of us. But I didn't realize that it was affecting my life until something happened in my late 30s. And that's kind of where my story of transformation began.
Okay, and that's real interesting, and I thank you. And I knew that this interview was going to be amazing because having something happen to you that's beyond a concept it's remarkable. So if you wouldn't mind, Anne, I normally don't do this, but I would like you to just go ahead and indulge us in your story. Let's get to it.
Okay, let me tell you a little bit of the last part of the story now, just in case, just to hold your attention almost, because I know it would for me. So at this point, I can put my awareness. It means I can feel inside of my connective tissue. I can feel inside my skull, and I can let the tension that is stored inside, I can let it go. I can let it release. So I've got to the place where I've actually shifted my skull bones, and I've grown 3/4 of an inch in my 50s because I've released that burden that I've been carrying all those years. But I couldn't do what I can do now at the beginning. At the beginning, the way it happened is I had a business altercation with a couple of other mothers at my boys' school. And they told me I'd done something wrong. And these women were very self-confident, self-assured, authority type women in my mind. And I was a scared mother on the inside. And they told me I'd done something wrong. And my mind just spun out of control. For like 3 days, I could not stop my mind spinning just over everything, like what I'd said, what they'd said, what had happened, what I could have done differently, just all the different permutations. And it was at the end of those 3 days that I realized two things. First of all, this is not normal. Most people do not react this intently to something that really wasn't a big deal. But the second thing I realized was it felt a little bit like how I reacted as a child when my dad had told me I'd done something wrong. So that was the first little inkling that maybe something from my childhood is still affecting me to this day. Which is such a funny thing to say because there was so much from my childhood, but I just had that one opening right there. And that's when I started to think, okay, so what can I do about it? Well, I didn't know what I could do about it at that point. I happened to go to a doctor's appointment in that time frame, and he was a holistic physician, so he had more tools in his toolbox than many doctors do. And he asked me what my stress level was because he could tell I was stressed. And I said it was an 8 out of 10. And then he asked me why. And it was that question that made me realize, oh, it was finding my mother dead on the bathroom floor when I was 19, because those tears from that event were still just under the surface. Well, he happened to know this technique that is called EFT, which is short for emotional freedom technique. It's also called tapping. Have you ever heard of it?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, good. I love that. So he tapped with me about my mother's death for about 15 minutes. And I walked away being able to tell the story in my mind for the first time ever without the tears there. And that's when I realized how we hold our history and our memories and our emotions and our traumas physically in our body, and that we can let them go, because I had no idea to that point that that's how it worked.
Okay, so let me get this straight, and this is for the audience. So the cause and effect of your mother's death put a hold on you, but the action that you took basically for that cause and effect, the action was those tears that stopped you, and you found a way with this doctor to get rid of this. Now, this is the step that intrigues me, and this is what I want to know. What happened the hour after you left that doctor's office?
Well, I was amazed. I was amazed how such a simple technique could make such a difference. But I had an engineering background and I wanted to know more about it. I didn't know whether that was just a fluke, right? A one-time thing. So I went home and I learned everything I could about it because it was given away for free by Gary Craig, who developed the technique. So I learned everything I could about it. And then I still wanted to try it out because I still didn't necessarily believe that it was so simple that it could really make a big difference. So I had a 17-year-old cat at home at the time, and we'd been told I had to give him a daily saline shot, like an injection of saline solution. And I hated shots, and my hand was shaking so badly when I gave him that first shot. I knew I had to do something different because I couldn't do that every day. It was just too stressful. So I tried out the technique. I tapped about it using this technique, EFT, and I tapped about every aspect of it, which is something you do with EFT. So I tapped about my hand shaking. I tapped about my fear of hurting my cat. And I tapped about all the memories from all the injections I had had over the years. And the next day, when I went to give him that shot, the needle slid right in. My hand was totally calm. I was totally at peace. All that fear that had been sitting inside of me the day before had totally gone. And that's when I realized how powerful it was. And that's when I started using it every day.
Okay, now let's spin this around real quick. So you get a bunch of developments happening with this, and it comes to a point that you have to explain this to your family. So how did that come about?
Gosh, I'm not even sure I remember that. I know they thought it was really weird because it is. You're tapping on your head, you're tapping on your face, you're tapping on your collarbone and under your arm. But as I did it more and more, and a lot of time to begin with, I would like do it where they couldn't see me. And I think a lot of people do that, head to the bathroom for a few minutes and just do some tapping. But they saw me getting more peaceful and getting less reactionary. So the whole household became more peaceful, because if I was peaceful, I was attracting peace into my future, and everything around us was more peaceful. So it was worth looking a little silly to do that.
Okay. And I'm glad that you put that out there for the audience so that anyone that decides that this is the method that they should take on, that it's acceptable. People will accept it. Just explain it. Or after you feel comfortable with it, explain it to someone and they can go from there. Now, you take care of this one trauma, but you have multiple traumas that are part of your puzzle. And that's one thing that people don't realize with our mental ability. We can compartmentalize tons of things, but it can take one thing to be the catalyst to that chain, make a chain reaction. So go ahead and enlighten us a whole lot more into what went on after this.
Well, I started using this technique every day. So the first part in that is noticing when you're becoming emotional, right? Because we get caught up in our emotions. So to be able to say, okay, look at me, I'm starting to get frustrated or angry or whatever, that in itself takes some awareness. So I started to become aware of that. And then I would tap. I would use this technique, accept the feelings. I'm feeling frustrated right now, whatever it is, and allow the frustration to release. And then I'd carry on with my day. So that's kind of just working on the day to day. But I realized as I did that, I was becoming more peaceful. But I wanted more, and I wanted it faster. So you're right. I had all this history and I wrote it down. I wrote down every big trauma, every little trauma, all the humiliations, all the teasing. I wrote down everything from my childhood. And I tapped through one each night for about an hour to an hour and a half each night. And that's when things really started to move faster. And it got to the point where my mind became quiet. And I'd never experienced that before. It felt like I was living in a different reality. It felt so foreign to me. But that's when I realized all those phrases that had been in my mind, like I judged myself or criticized myself or other people, they had been my dad's phrases that I had taken on into my subconscious mind as a child, and I just replayed them over and over again. But I could not see that until they had gone.
Whoa, that's powerful.
It
So,
was.
so, so basically, once you got more, you dive deeper into your senses and your stances on things, your thoughts, patterns, just the ideology of Anne, basically. You were able to take a step back and see things from a different perspective, and you found a way to solve them. Now, can you explain to us how you were able to solve these things?
Well, that's an interesting way of phrasing it. I wouldn't phrase it that way. I might have
Okay.
done early on, right? Because we often try and work out why things are happening the way they are. Whereas this work is actually accepting the feelings we're having right now, accepting the thoughts we're having right now, even if they're not very nice thoughts. I remember tapping on the phrase, I hate myself, for like hours over a multiple days, until the attachment to that thought, or until the feeling around that thought, or the emotion around it had just disappeared. And then they're just words, right? It's that attachment to the words and to the phrases and to the memories. That's where we suffer. So I just managed to let them go, which is that's how inner peace comes about. So it's been a full acceptance of whatever it is I'm feeling and thinking in the moment, rather than a working out why. Now, kind of working out the memories is part of it. So like with the cat and the injection, I had to also tap through the memories of the injections. So if I'm working on something that feels really frustrating right now, I've probably felt that same frustration in my past. And as I release that frustration, a memory might pop into my mind of when I felt that way from the past. And then I can tap on that memory. And then maybe as I tap on that one, a memory from before that with the same feeling will pop up, and then I can tap on that. So in that way, you really are finding the kind of the reason, but it's more with a feeling and accepting than actually using thought to think about it.
Okay. So more like an education with an emotional attachment.
Yes, it's all about Emotions is one layer. We start with, we've got a memory. Maybe we've got a memory and we don't realize that there's emotions there. So as we tap on the memory, we'll realize, oh, there's really some emotion there. And as we go through this process, what I realize EFT is doing is it's opening up the subconscious mind. And as the subconscious mind opens, our self-awareness deepens. So we become aware of emotions, and then we become aware of the physical sensations underneath the emotions. So imagine you're frustrated, right? Can you feel in your body where that frustration is held, where the tension is that we call frustration?
See, I don't think I can. I don't think I have that mental,
Self-awareness.
that
That's
self-awareness,
self-awareness. Yeah.
or the mental capacity. I know that may sound a little weird that I said mental capacity, but I don't know if I have that upper echelon of mental thought yet. I know where
Right.
my
But it's not a
frustration
thought. It's not a
or
thought.
a
It's a
process,
feeling.
feeling,
It's
or
a
feeling.
feeling. Yeah. So for me, frustration is tension along my solar plexus. See, now I used to be where you are, right? I was not aware of how I felt when I was feeling an emotion. That's just something that happens along the way as you start to do this work. So that's why I couldn't do what I can do now before without having done this EFT work and the opening up of the subconscious mind. So it's kind of like being a development over the years.
Okay, so let me ask you a question then, because I'm really deep into this now. So, someone like me, for instance, I guess they call me a systematic thinker or a systematic person. And that systematic thing that I do or system I have goes for my emotions, my thoughts, and everything. Everything has a set process, a science to it. How do I break my science of my emotions to work with this? Because like I'm like this is mind-boggling to me. Like I'm actually, I'm touching my head now, and I'm perplexed because I'm like, what you're saying makes a lot of sense. I should be able to, because my father died in 1994, and it's something that I have used as a catalyst to do this show, to have the passion I have for everything in life, and not talking about the grieving process, but the actual process of like you said, of letting go of the hostile feelings and the anger that I have in that I've never done.
Yeah, so it's still inside of you. It's literally inside of you. It's literally dis-ease inside of you. So it's clearly not going to be a good thing to leave it in there,
Right.
obviously. So letting it go, you've got to be willing to do it. Right? If you feel that's what's pushing you forward, and if you believe that not having it there would hold you back, then those are beliefs that you would work on first.
Okay.
Right? You tap on those beliefs first to allow the resistance to doing the work to release.
Okay.
And
So
then
real,
it would be easier.
okay. So real quick though, I want to do something because we do something nostalgic on here because we have two nostalgic spots on here. One is called the shameless plug. Now you came to me with a great story, and you just want to tell your story to the world, which I love that, and I thank you for that. But how can the audience reach you across this world wide web or however you seem to communicate or want to communicate? Because we won't put any clause on communicating. How can they reach out to you and get into this mode means and this emotional triumph that you have taken upon yourself?
Well, I'm pretty active on Facebook and I share a lot of what I think is really deep, deep thought on there. So you can contact me on there. I have my website, which has the x-rays on, so you can actually see how deep this work can get. And I have a YouTube channel where I share a lot of this information. I try and explain how I went about this and the understandings of it. And then I have my book, which explains all of this in deeper detail. And that's called A Pathway to Insight.
All right. So, real quick, because I cover things about books because you're a listener to the podcast, which I thank you for. This book, so you've done, and we'll get back to the other stuff, but just real quick on this because I like this for aspiring authors. But here's the thing that I want to question you and I want you to wrap your mind around. You had a mental conquest that you did with your book. You talk about a mental triumph that not too many people can say that they've ever accomplished. I can't say I've accomplished it. I mean, I've come over some stripes and things, but you actually have a technique and a mode and a means to heal yourself, to take care of things, in my opinion, Now, I may use the wrong word by saying heal, so you can correct me if I did that. But here's my question. When you wrote this book, did this book give you any type of emotional gratification, or was it more or less a idea that I need to get this information out there? I have stumbled upon something that has been amazing for me, and I need to get it to the masses.
Well, it's certainly fun to get it done and finished. But the reason I did it is I'd got to this place where I am now, where I could put my awareness inside, and I didn't want to forget any details of the story because I knew I would move beyond it. And there's some interesting things that happen along the way to the human body as it releases tension. And I wanted to get all that written down so that because I want other people to do this work because I believe it can change the direction of humanity.
Okay. And I can agree with that. Now, has there been any time, getting back off the book real quick, back to what we were talking about, has there ever been a portion of when you were doing these actions and working on your emotions that the results weren't what you expected?
Um, no, I don't think so. One thing that does happen is you release one layer, the next layer pops up. Always.
Ooh.
It's there's so many layers. So, you know, releasing working with my mother's death, it wasn't just that one experience with the doctor, right? That took off the top layer. But as time went by over the next few days or, hours or weeks, whatever, more details of the memory would pop up. And they weren't always pleasant. But what I came to realize is that those memories are just energy that is stuck in the body. All we have to do is find a way to release the energy, and it will disappear. We sometimes think it's kind of scary to look at our stuff, but it's just stuck energy and it will leave.
Okay. So that's sort of like the mantra of pain is something that's just leaving the body
Yeah.
to a degree.
Pain
Yeah.
is
Okay.
just it's calling your attention to it, right? At tension. So let me go into the second step of my journey because that's
Okay.
kind of where that comes in. So as I did more and more of the tapping and had released my past and everything, I realized I didn't need to use this technique anymore, EFT, because I could just feel the sensations of the emotions. So I developed the ability to focus by then. So I could focus on the tension. So the frustration, if I'm feeling it in my solar plexus, I can focus on, I can put it at tension. I can give my attention to it, right? The word attention is two words, at tension. So I could focus on it and give it my attention. And when I would do that, it would release a little bit. So I might have a thought such as, I'm afraid of making this phone call. That thought has some fear, right? The fear of making this phone call. If I can focus on that fear inside of my body, the physical sensations, it would release. The fear would release. And then the thought, I'm afraid of making this phone call, is just a thought. It has no energy left. So it becomes easy to make the phone call. So I started to do this every day instead of tapping on my childhood. I would lay on the sofa and bring collective traumas like 9/11 to mind and just feel it and allow it to release. And so that's kind of a deeper level of awareness, of self-awareness than it was before. And pain is often at that level, right? It's a physical pain, it's a physical sensation. So if we can focus on it, like your ankle, if you can focus on it and just allow it to be felt, allow the pain to be felt, which is not easy to do. But if you can do it, it will release over time.
And I thank you for that because I'm definitely going to need to do that with my right one, bar and surgery and everything. All right, so that's amazing. Now, I guess with that part right there, I have a few questions that I want to ask you real quick, if you don't mind. I just want to throw these in here. I pay homage to a show. It's called 2020. And you're a listener, so you know that it's a homage to a news magazine. John Stossel's the comedian. Diane Sawyer was amazing at interviewing, but Barbara Walters, God rest her soul, or whomever you believe in, she was amazing with making people personable. So I would like Anne to take a step real quick before we go any further to get these 2020 questions out the way, if you don't mind.
Sure.
So I will start. The greatest thing in finding out that we have mental anguish is conquering that mental anguish, which you do very well. And you do it, and I use the word well because I don't like the word good. Um, so in that context, you do that very well. When you present this to some people, there's a big word, skepticism, that comes out. So my question to you is, how do you deal with skepticism from people when you're trying to explain this to them?
That's a really hard one, obviously, because I'm the one who's experienced the changes. But for me, having the x-rays was huge, right? Because I knew my skull was changing. I could feel the bones relax, even though I didn't know they had not been relaxed. And then I had these x-rays taken, and I had ones from 8 years prior. So to show someone that you can change your skull structure just with focused attention, I think gets people's attention.
Okay, okay. I like that one. So my next question, we're going to go down this rabbit hole a little bit deeper, if you don't mind.
Sure.
So you've worked on yourself. You've helped other people. When you help other people, they notice differences. They see their quality of life change. When someone sees their quality of life change, it changes all the aspects around them. Thought processes, basically, we'll say, I always use the word mode and mean. It changes their mode and mean, basically. They become the person that they optimally want to be. Or in some cases, they don't. In the case of yourself, how do you feel? Do you feel that you have become optimal, the person that you're supposed to be? Or are you optimal, the person that you wanted to be?
I'm on the way. It's a journey. It's definitely a journey, and I'm not there yet. But I do believe this work allows us to become more of our true selves. Right? We're releasing the tension or the baggage that's been holding us back. And as we release that, we become free to say what we really want to say or to do what we really want to do. We're not holding ourselves back out of fear or whatever it is that we've been programmed with in childhood. So it's definitely a journey.
Okay, and I really, really appreciate that. Now, we're going to go into an aspect of communication that has become one of the biggest parts of what speakers want to be. Me and you both are not speakers, but we just have to go along with this little role play right here. Everybody has to do a TED Talk in life because you have something that's so important that it has a science to it. It has a mode, mean method. It has all kinds of, it's basically a scientific method you have. So if you were to give a TED Talk, and we'll say let's do a nice location. You talked about New York, so let's go to the middle of the United States. Everybody knows I love Ohio, even though I'm from West Virginia. So let's go with Chicago. You're in Chicago. University doesn't matter what it is out there. We'll just say you're at the arena that Michael Jordan played in, and
Okay.
you're about to give this TED talk. What is the first sentence that comes out your mouth at this TED talk? At this TED talk, I kind of stuttered.
Well, one of my sons is at university in Illinois, and I have applied to do TED Talks before, but I've actually been told that this is pseudoscience and
Wow.
that they do not do pseudoscience. So I do hope one day that I will be able to do that. But the subject matter, I'm not sure which way I would go with it. But it would be something along the lines of, I don't think you know yet how much depth there is to life that you're not yet aware of.
That's powerful.
Yeah, there's a
Now,
huge depth to life.
yeah, there is. This episode is really going to make you listeners think. I hope you all get tied into this really deep. Now, the last and final question inside of 2020. This is the hardest thing on earth to ask someone, but I have to ask you. And that's because you have many faces to you. You're an author, activist, and I know you may not want to say you're an activist, but an activist, a mental health worker, a mental health enthusiast. Anything that I can wrap around echelon of mental health, you represent it. So I want you to take that with you and wear that as a crown or however you want to wear that, a sash, whatever, or a fanny pack. But um, the thing is that we all express these ideas and these passions for things that happen to us. So we embrace them like you have. So at the end of the day, when you shut everything down and it's just you in the mirror before you go to sleep or before whatever you do before you go to sleep, none of my business, but whatever you did, what do you say to yourself to motivate you for the next day?
I don't. I'm very
Oh,
much in the moment. I'm my goal is inner peace. It's always been inner peace. So I actually come out of my mind, out of my thinking mind, into my feeling mind. And I just do more of this release work. Look inside, I find where the tension is, I hold my attention on it, and I allow it to release. So I'm not really thinking about anything, I'm just feeling. And whatever happens the next day is what happens the next day.
Okay, and I can go with that. Now, to spin this back around real quick, um, what are some ways that since you have adopted and have become entrenched in what you do, how has this changed your outlook on people in general? Because here's my question, and I'll elaborate a little bit better because I kind of went off on a tangent nowhere. Um, with the way that you think now and the way that you emote emotions, it almost feels like to me that you can kind of see through people sometimes. You can see through tomfoolery and stuff like that. Is that an ability, or is that a hindsight, or is that something that you have now? Do you How do you read people with what mental capabilities you have now?
Well, you've probably heard the phrase as within, so without.
Yes.
It's totally true. So the deeper you have awareness inside of yourself, the deeper you have awareness of what's going on outside of you. So yes, I can sense when people how they're breathing, right? I'm aware of very much of how I breathe, how deep it is or not, and I can sense that in other people. And if people are lying, that and they're not telling the truth, there's part of them they don't want to breathe into. There's part of themselves they don't want to see, so they don't have a deep breath. They might have kind of a breathy breath, a breathy voice as they're talking, because they're not breathing deep into their body, they're not grounded. So I can sense things like that, which I had never been able to do before. So it's really interesting. And sound. I can feel sound throughout my body, not just hear it with my ears, which of course makes listening to music all that much more amazing because you feel it at such a deep level.
Okay, I like that. And tying things back around because you told me that there's 3 steps to what you do. Please and yes, please enlighten us with the third step. And one thing I want to say here real quick, and before we go any further, I always do a testimony for everyone. So I'm going to give you yours before you give me that third one. First off, our initial interaction, I was like, wow, the messages and everything that went between us. And I thank you for being cordial and always being so formal and polite and being even understanding when we had this conversation, our pre-talk beforehand, and we just went over everything real fast and got everything going. So in life, there's people that are go-getters, and then there are people or that are on the forefront. You're one of those people that's on the forefront. Because you took a notion, jumped into the ocean, and decided to take care of yourself, to realize that, hey, there are issues. There's no resolve for me right now. And with you figuring out a way to handle the resolve, because we're not going to say figure out anything, because you said not to figure out, to handle the resolve in a manner that makes you mobile, open, and able to emote in the world is a great, amazing mental feat. And I want to tell you thank you for that, because you explaining that here today, this is going to save somebody's life, or this has saved someone's life. This will go further than just this conversation we have today. Someone will go on to interact with you and learn more. They will go to your YouTube. They will figure out how to place it in their lives. And you taking the moment and the time out of your busy schedule to do this here, I want to tell you thank you. And what I want you to continue to do throughout the rest of your life and beyond, because everything you're making is evergreen. So that's an amazing thing too. Evergreen content, it helps the masses, and then it helps in singularity because you have honed that skill in. You may not know it today, but you're a great advertiser and marketer at the same time with what you've gone through and what you were going through in the continued process. So I want to tell you thank you for that. Letting us into your mental struggle, your problems, your pain, letting us see the hurt, the authentic human being, not the good times or the high times. And when I mean high times, I'm just meaning fun times. Um, It's a deeper level and it's a greater selflessness that no one else has. So I want you to take that and keep that. And I hope that you pass it along to your children and you pass it along to anybody that is around you. And I hope they evolve and revolve with that because that is not something that can be manufactured, taught, or bought.
Well, I hope it can be taught. I'm trying to teach it.
What I mean is the part about the selflessness. The selflessness cannot be taught. It's something that was given to you when you had that tragedy at 19, and it's something that you figured out how to get that selflessness out years later, and it's something that you're carrying today, even right now with your smile and everything. You're carrying it right now. So, on that note, that's my testimony to you, and let me pass it back along to you so that you can enlighten us on this third step.
Thank you. Thank you for that. So the second step was laying on the sofa and feeling these collective traumas like 9/11 or the Loma Prieta earthquake I was in. I was just feeling those emotions that had been stuck inside from those memories that I had had. And at some point during that process, I realized I could keep my awareness inside my body after the tension had released, which was really weird. I'd never heard of it before. I didn't know what I was doing. It was all new to me, but it felt very different. So I knew it was different. So the way I try and explain it is imagine you have a toothache or a stomach ache. You can sense where that pain is, right? Because the pain is there. But once the tension has released, the pain is released, you can't get your awareness. You can't feel exactly where that was anymore. I could. I could keep my awareness inside my body. So I started to move my awareness around because why not? I was just playing, and I could find where there was tension, and I can compare that to no tension. So I could feel there was tension somewhere, and I would focus on it because I'd honed this ability to focus. So I'd focus on it, hold my attention on it, and it would release a little bit. So then I'd do it again and again and again, and I started to move around my torso, releasing tension when I'd find it. And eventually, it took many, many months, but eventually I got inside my head. And that was huge because the pain and the tension inside my head was almost unbearable. But it had been there my whole life since I was born with my right foot up against my right shin and the whole body was twisted. But I had no awareness of it. I could not feel it. Like for 50 years of my life, I did not know that pain and tension was there until I had released enough to become aware of it. And then at that point, I have this technique, right? So I'd focus on it, release, focus, release, focus, release. And at some point, I could feel things start to release. And I realized its adhesions in the connective tissue were releasing. And I could feel my skull bones relax.
Whoa.
And so that's what I'm doing right now. I'm just going deeper into my skull. I'm releasing tension in my palate and in my cheekbones, and it feels good. So that's what I call insight. That is what I believe is the original meaning of the word insight.
Okay.
Which is why my book is called A Pathway to Insight.
Okay. And I thank you for all of that. Because that right there, like, that's going to help me because I have a lot of, not soul searching, but I got a lot of mental work I'll need to do. And I know, and I want to take this cheap shot at myself. I'm the type of person, being where I am in the US, when it gets cold, I make more time for myself. So once it gets cold again, I will give it about another month because we're in second day of fall. So I will definitely take time to work on myself, and I will have to communicate with you a little bit more. And definitely, I need to get on this wavelength, as I want to call it in my terminology. I need this kind of empowerment in my life because I consider myself to be a strong mental person, a mental health person, not a buff or anything like that, because that's not the term I'm using. But I felt like that I was in a strong control of everything that goes on with me, and I'm not.
Yeah, well, that word control, right? Right. We really don't want to have control. If we need control, then we're holding something in, we're holding something back. But if we release it, we don't need control because we're just the person who we are. We're not having to control anything.
Okay,
Well, let me just come back to one point that I did actually a few months ago. I put out a workbook as well. So there is also a Pathway to Insight workbook, which will ask you all the questions to bring up all your shit so that you can work through it with these techniques.
Okay, and where can you find that?
It's on Amazon.
Okay. So definitely, audience, make sure you wrap yourself up with that. And then the greatest thing about this show is I have show notes, and that's the greatest thing about a podcast because I never realized that people go beyond just what we say here. They go look at those show notes and they find things. So what I will have is I will make sure that everything that comes from Anne, I will have it in those show notes. I will have it out there so that you all can get that hyperlink, touch it, and go to it, and then you can meet Anne. So Anne, to wrap up this show real quick, I need you to let the audience know um, who in your life is special that you would like to give thanks to help you, that helped you along the way. I'm sorry, I messed up right there. Because here's the thing, the tragedy that at age 19, the trauma of the two adoptive parents, the trauma of being adopted. I'm not saying that it's a good or bad thing, but I want to still say it's a trauma because when you learn that, it puts you in a different realm of thinking, I believe. Just that's my opinion. So you had a lot of hurt, but you found a way to make your life a little bit easier by handling the hurt. Handling is the best word to use, not dealing. Handling the hurt and the sorrow and all that mental anguish. So are there a few people that you'd like to thank along the way that have gone along with you on this journey that you're on today?
Sure. Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, we've heard about some of them, but my birth mother is still alive, and she handed me over to this family so that I could experience all these things so that I could do this work I'm doing now. So, it's a little bit weird, but I have to thank her for doing that. I think she was supposed to do it. Um, those two women who gave me that business altercation, I hated them at the time. But without that, I would not possibly have started this journey. And that doctor, he's still around, he's still a local doctor. I mean, without him knowing EFT and doing it with me, I still would not have done this journey. And then, my husband, I thank him for not intervening in my path, right, allowing me to do it because he's not interested in this. And my two boys for being, part of that journey. That our closest family are our biggest teachers because they will trigger us. They will bring us
Yes.
the things that we need to look at the most. So I thank them for that. And my best friend, Claudia, who's doing a lot of this work with me and has actually been able to feel inside of her body too, which has been really fun.
Okay. So once again, I am JR from West Virginia and Commonplace, and I want to thank Ann for coming on and giving us this insightful look into our mind, body, and spirit. I'm gonna have to play this song by Anita Baker, Body and Soul, and just tie it in with this because I'm like, I need to work on some things. And I think, audience, that you all should work on some things too in this instance. I'm gonna take away the word work and I'm gonna say do some insightful soul searching, some mental hunting. Figure out,
Inner work.
yes, the inner work, like you said, Anne.
It's
So on
got
that,
work there. Yes.
yes. So either way, I'm JR and you are,
And hints.
and we are signing off.
Please follow WV Uncommonplace on Instagram, Tumblr, Twitter, TikTok where we have some great content, Facebook, LinkedIn. Hit up the merch store at onecommonplace.square.site. Join the email list from the website and rate, subscribe, and give feedback from your favorite podcatcher. And lastly, thanks for listening and tune into the next episode.
Hey Capshovians, mark your calendars for January 23rd and 24th as we bring you the first ever Capshovians Live in Orlando. We are bringing together a dozen expert speakers to dive deep into the one, yes, just one, key strategy you need to scale your marketing and your business in 2024. You get an exclusive peek into the future of the Capsho software and connect with leading industry figures. Whether you're looking to network with fellow entrepreneurs, learn from top-notch experts, or just want a memorable experience, this is the place to be. We are keeping this event intentionally intimate so that you're not just another face in a crowded room. Yes, we want to get to know each and every one of you, so spots are very limited, which means you're going to need to grab your ticket now. Go to www.capshovianslive.com and get in on the early bird pricing before it goes up. That's www.capshovianslive.com, and let's take on 2024 together.